FBI Most Wanted. Every person currently on the FBI's Most Wanted list. Chances are you've heard about the FBI's Most Wanted list at some point in your life. It's one of those things that almost everyone recognizes by name, but it's also likely that you don't actually know much about it besides the fact that it's a list of criminals. Dangerous criminals. Well, I was in the same boat. So I did some research. And today, I'm going to explain a brief history of the FBI's Most Wanted list, how it came to be, and why it still exists. Then, we're going to take a deep dive into every single person who is currently on the list, and exactly why they're there. Spoiler alert, these are some seriously bad people. The FBI's Most Wanted list wasn't just randomly created, it wasn't always this famous. It was born out of necessity, strategy, and the simple idea that sometimes law enforcement needs the public's help to catch the people who don't want to be found. To even be eligible to end up on this list, you have to do some truly terrible things. In most cases, it's not just one crime. It's a long history, or a string of violent, disturbing acts committed over time. And once your name is on this list, there are only two ways off. You're either captured, or you're dead. The creation of the FBI's Featured Search List, 1949. The Most Wanted list was actually born in 1949. At the time, the director of the FBI was having dinner with the chief and editor of the International News Service. During that dinner, they began discussing new ways to promote the capture of the FBI's toughest and most dangerous criminals. The idea was simple, but powerful. The FBI wanted to use newspapers to spread awareness to everyday civilians. The goal was to reach as many people as possible, hoping that someone, somewhere, might recognize one of these criminals and provide a tip. By involving the public, law enforcement could arm itself with information it might never get otherwise. Shortly after that meeting, the list was officially published, and incredibly, on that very same day, one of the individuals featured on the initial list was captured. From that moment on, the FBI's Most Wanted list became a permanent fixture in the world of high-level justice. It proved that public awareness worked, and that sometimes the smallest tip could lead to the capture of the most dangerous people. To this day, the list still follows the same core principle. Once you're on it, there are only two ways off. You're either captured or you're dead. Alejandro Castillo. It's crazy that the first entry on this list is also the youngest by far. Alejandro Castillo was born on November 26, 1998, making him only 26 years old at the time of this recording. He was born in Arizona, is male, Hispanic, stands around 5 feet 6 inches, and weighs anywhere between 180 and 190 pounds. And what landed him on this list might shock you. When Alejandro was just 17 years old, he was working at a Shamar's restaurant in Charlotte, North Carolina. He worked there with his girlfriend, but not only his girlfriend. His ex-girlfriend also worked at the same restaurant. Alejandro's ex-girlfriend, Sandy, had lent him some money, but before he could ever pay her back, Sandy went missing. Then, the very next day, both Alejandro and his current girlfriend also disappeared. At first, it seemed like 3 people had vanished without a trace. But Alejandro and his girlfriend were not victims. They were on the run. The night before Sandy went missing, Alejandro and Sandy had plans to meet so he could repay his debt. But that was never his intention. When the two met up, Alejandro and his girlfriend forced Sandy into a vehicle. Alejandro's girlfriend held a gun on her as they drove to the nearest ATM, where Sandy was forced to withdraw cash. After that, they drove deep into the woods. That's where Alejandro murdered his ex-girlfriend and left her body in a ditch. Sandy's car was later found abandoned just outside of town, likely dumped by the killers. But oddly enough, Alejandro's car was found all the way in Arizona, on the opposite side of the country, also abandoned. That discovery led investigators to surveillance footage showing Alejandro and his girlfriend crossing the border into Mexico. That's where they disappeared. 3 months later, Alejandro's girlfriend turned herself in. She claimed that one morning she woke up and Alejandro was simply gone. With nowhere else to go, she decided to surrender. Whether he abandoned her or whether she's lying to protect him, we may never know. What we do know is this: Alejandro Castillo, the 17-year-old murderer who is now 26 years old, is still at large. Donald Eugene Fields II. Donald Eugene Fields II definitely looks like somebody who would be on this list. He was born on July 9, 1964, stands somewhere between 6 feet and 6 feet 4 inches tall, is a white male, and has a noticeable scar on his chest along with several tattoos. But his appearance is the least disturbing thing about him. Fields is on this list for an extremely unsavory reason. He's alleged to have trafficked at least one child in Missouri between approximately 2013 and 2017. Authorities believe that Donald knowingly attempted to recruit, entice, harbor, transport, provide, maintain, and solicit a person he believed to be under the age of 18. Put simply, he was trying to sell a child for sex. His last known location was Franklin County, Missouri, but since 2022, he's been reported traveling across the country, constantly moving, and that movement has made him incredibly difficult to track down. One of the few breaks in this case came when one of the men Fields was allegedly selling this underage victim to was caught and sentenced to more than 30 years in prison. That man admitted to giving Fields cash, a car, a motorcycle, Christmas presents, and even vacations, all in exchange for access to a 14-year-old girl. Every time the FBI receives a tip about Fields' whereabouts, they respond aggressively. Billboards go up. Signs are posted. Facebook ads flood the area, all asking for information. But somehow, Fields always seems to be one step ahead. And while I hope he's brought to justice very soon, for now, Donald Eugene Fields II remains exactly where he doesn't belong: free. Vel, Haiti gang leader. Ironically, Vel's last name literally translates to innocent man in French. But this man is anything but innocent. Vel is one of the leaders of one of Haiti's largest and most violent gangs, a group that has been terrorizing the country for years. Beyond his affiliation with organized crime, Vel is personally connected to a long string of murders and kidnappings. In 2021, Vel and his gang collaborated with another group to kidnap 17 Christian missionaries who were in Haiti at the time. If that story sounds familiar, it's because it made international headlines when it happened. Disturbingly, 5 of those hostages were children, one of them under a year old. Fortunately, all of the hostages were eventually released after an undisclosed ransom was paid. Initially, the gangs demanded $1 million per person. What they ultimately settled for remains unknown, but what is known is how that money was used. Vel's gang used the ransom to purchase weapons and expand their operations. Later that same year, the Haitian president was assassinated, leaving behind a massive power vacuum, one that Vel's gang was more than ready to exploit. By 2023, it was reported that the gang had grown to as many as 600 members, including children who were forced to fight against their will. What makes Vel even more unsettling is how openly he operates. In recent years, he's participated in a full documentary showing reporters his lifestyle and openly discussing how he rose to power. There's no question about it. Vel is considered armed and extremely dangerous. And for information leading to his arrest, authorities are offering a $2 million reward. Based on everything we know about him, it's not hard to understand why he's still on the run. Wilver VZ Palomino. Wilver VZ Palomino is a high-ranking member of the National Liberation Army, also known as the ELN, a militant organization active primarily in Colombia and Venezuela. Like many groups born out of political movements, the ELN didn't stay purely ideological for long. Over time, it became deeply involved in organized crime, focusing heavily on kidnapping, extortion, and attacks on oil infrastructure, acts often described as eco-terrorism. Eventually, and almost inevitably, the group became entangled in the drug trade. Wilver himself is alleged to have murdered multiple human rights activists in Colombia. Beyond that, He's wanted for narco-terrorism, large-scale drug distribution, murder, and a long list of related charges. Authorities believe that Wilver and the ELN are heavily responsible for the massive influx of drugs entering the southern United States. And because of that, the FBI is offering up to $5 million for information that could lead to his arrest. Despite the size of the reward, there is currently no confirmed information about where Wilver may be hiding. His whereabouts remain completely unknown. But if you do happen to know where Wilver VZ Palomino is, you might be $5 million richer. And more importantly, one of the most dangerous figures connected to organized crime in South America would finally be brought to justice. Ruja Ignatova. Out of everyone on this list, this person might not seem as violent as the others at first glance. Compared to murderers and gang leaders, Ruja Ignatova almost looks like a petty criminal. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Ruja is a Bulgarian woman who was once believed to be a successful entrepreneur. She was the founder of a company called OneCoin, a Bulgaria-based organization that claimed to be a revolutionary cryptocurrency. And as soon as you hear the word cryptocurrency, you can probably guess where this is going. OneCoin was nothing more than a massive fraud, targeting investors all over the world. To keep the scheme growing, Ruja allegedly made false statements and representations, convincing people to pour more and more money into the system. In reality, it was a classic Ponzi scheme. Over the course of its operation, OneCoin is believed to have defrauded investors out of more than $4 billion, an almost unbelievable amount of money. Ruja and her company were charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud, conspiracy to commit money laundering, conspiracy to commit securities fraud, and securities fraud itself. On October 12, 2017, she was officially charged in the United States District Court. But by then, she was already gone. Today, authorities are offering up to $5 million for any information that leads to Ruja Ignatova's arrest or conviction. So consider this a reminder. Be careful where you put your money, and don't fall for cryptocurrency pyramid schemes. Arnaldo Jimenez. This man is absolutely vile, just like everyone else on this list. But the specific details of this case make it especially disturbing. On May 11, 2012, Arnaldo Jimenez married his wife. Just one day later, on May 12th, Arnaldo is alleged to have murdered her by stabbing her to death in the back seat of his Maserati. After the murder, he's believed to have taken her body from the vehicle and carried it into her apartment. There, he placed her lifeless body in the bathtub, still wearing her wedding dress. And then, he vanished. When Arnaldo's wife stopped responding to calls and texts and failed to pick up her children from school, her family requested a wellness check. That's when police entered the apartment and found her body in the bathtub. Arnaldo was nowhere to be found. Investigators were able to trace his phone records across multiple states, eventually tracking him to Texas, dangerously close to the Mexican border. And that's where the trail went cold. Authorities believe Arnaldo fled into Mexico, and after more than 12 years and hundreds of tips, nothing has brought investigators any closer to finding him. No confirmed sightings, no arrests. Hopefully, Arnaldo Jimenez is eventually captured and sentenced to life in prison for the crime he committed. But so far, this case has followed a familiar pattern. Commit a horrific crime, disappear, and never look back. Omar Alexander Cardenas and Alexis Flores. Omar Alexander Cardenas' case is short and simple, but no less disturbing. He's charged with murdering a man in broad daylight, and the entire incident was caught on camera. Footage shows Omar walking up to the scene and then casually walking away after the murder, as if nothing had happened. Omar is another young entry on this list, only 29 years old at the time of this recording, and even younger when the crime occurred. Not much is known about him, other than the fact that he stands around 5 feet 7 inches and weighs close to 300 pounds. On August 15, 2019, Omar walked into an open-air shopping center. He stopped in front of a barber shop, pulled a pistol from his waistband, and shot one of the people inside the shop in the head, killing him instantly. Then he simply walked away. Despite the murder happening in public, during the daytime, and being captured on video, Omar is still free today. Authorities believe he fled the country to avoid prosecution. Another case on this list follows a similar pattern, but with an even more disturbing victim. Alexis Flores is accused of kidnapping and strangling a 5-year-old girl in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She was reported missing in July of 2000 and was found weeks later, dead in the basement of an abandoned apartment building. For years, the case went cold. It wasn't until 2007 that advancements in DNA technology linked a T-shirt found at the scene to Alexis Flores. The match was exact. But by then, there was another problem. Alexis Flores was no longer in the United States. He had been deported years earlier for unrelated charges, and authorities had no idea where he went. Once again, a brutal crime with clear evidence and no justice. MS-13, Bhadresh Kumar. MS-13 is one of the most violent criminal organizations in the world. The gang operates primarily throughout Central America, especially in Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. But it's also deeply active in Mexico and the United States. Julian Adonai Arcaga Carayas is believed to be the leader of MS-13 in Honduras. That makes him responsible for an endless list of crimes, including drug trafficking, human trafficking, extortion, kidnapping, and extreme acts of violence. In the United States, he's specifically wanted for trafficking multi-ton loads of cocaine across the border, along with multiple murder charges. At one point, Julian was actually arrested and brought to court for the murder of 2 Honduran prosecutors. But during that court hearing, something unbelievable happened. 20 armed men dressed in official anti-gang uniforms walked into the courtroom. Seconds later, they opened fire. 4 police officers were killed, and Julian escaped once again. And just like that, he was free. Despite standing only around 5 feet 5 inches tall and weighing roughly 160 pounds, Julian is considered one of the most powerful and dangerous men in Honduras. Because of that, authorities are offering up to $5 million for information leading to his arrest. The final person on this list shares a disturbing similarity with the very first case. Bhadresh Kumar Patel worked at a Dunkin' Donuts with his wife, and it was inside that same Dunkin' Donuts where his wife was murdered. Customers entered the store one morning and noticed there were no employees present. When police arrived and searched the back room, they found Bhadresh's wife dead. Security footage showed both of them entering the back room, and only Bhadresh walking out. After the murder, he fled. He was last seen taking a taxi from a hotel in New Jersey to a train station in New York. After that, he vanished. No sightings, no contact. After researching every person on this list, 2 things became painfully clear. First, it's shocking how brazen some of these crimes are, and how easily people can disappear afterward. And second, it's disturbing how often simply leaving the country seems to act like a get-out-of-jail-free card. If you know anything about any of these individuals, consider submitting a tip. You might just be a little bit richer, and more importantly, you could help bring justice where it's been missing for far too long. Thank you so much for watching.